Brother, what a night it really was. Brother, what a fight it really was. Glory be.
Good afternoon.
Good
Good
afternoon.
evening.
Good
Good
evening.
morning.
Good
Good day,
morning.
all. Welcome.
Guten Tag.
Welcome to But That's Not Important Right Now, the podcast about crazy people
Podcast. Crazy people in advertising.
like
Is
Jarrod.
advertising? Speak for yourself. Actually, no, we're both crazy. Now that we think about it, yeah.
Yep, we're insane. Sorry,
I'm so
Jarrod.
done.
We started a little late because what has happened is that there was a crack in the ground in the tiles between my room and my kids' room.
Oh my goodness.
It started to get over the period of time. Okay, so we've had like a couple of big earthquakes in the last 4 to 5 years.
Right.
Yeah?
This is true.
And cracks developed in the plaster in the house, but we didn't pay it any mind. It didn't get worse. Nothing was moved. Like you didn't see things moved or anything like that. So you're kind of like, okay, it should be all right. But this crack in the ground was new, and we didn't know where it came from. So we brought the contractor in, and he started digging and realized that the crack not only runs under the tile, it's going up the wall. And it's literally splitting the house in half.
Jeez.
Behind the wall. Behind
Wow.
we had a cupboard. Behind the cupboard is this giant crack, and he starts digging it. And this house is 50, almost 60 years old. So, and interestingly enough, the story that I have to tell about this is that you may find this interesting, is that our mutual friend, Big George Wayne.
Yeah.
You know Big George Wayne from Hot 93 of fame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big George Wayne used to live in this house when he was a teenager. And my mom always says, I remember Big George Wayne. Big George. I remember this little skinny little kid, doing dishes in the bathroom, in the kitchen. And he warned me that, during Christmas time, the sinks clog up because of the change in temperature here in the valley. I'm like, what? So I actually told Big George Wayne this a couple of years ago. And George was like, wow, that is such a small world, Such a small world.
Well, we live in a small country, so yeah, that is to be expected.
Yeah, but so, his dad built this house and then sold it.
Really? Okay.
And then my parents bought it, and now I live here. But the thing is that it's really old, and it wasn't exactly a really well built house. So I always tell my students in Costat and graphic design students, know how you're finishing. Well, these guys didn't know how they were finishing, because the plans for the house look nothing like the finished product of the house. There was all. In fact, this house, and I was telling George this. I said, George, you know that the house is built back to front, right? He said, what do you mean? I said, when they built the house, the back of the house was designed to be like the front of the house. You see, they had this plan that you would have a back and a front that would look kind of the same. And the back would have this kind of big porch area that it would work out onto the jungle kind of idea. And somewhere along the line, they're like, nah, Jarrod, we don't have material to do this. Let me just do something for kind of weird. It was just, the way the house is built now is that you could tell that they're kind of halfway through decided we run out of material, so we were just going to have to not do that, And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is how advertising is. Advertising is like that,
Yeah.
Where you come out with this huge, big idea, and the client says, yeah, I want to do this, that, and the other. And then when you start looking at getting things done, I mean, we talked about this before, it just gets whittled down into, here's a swizzle stick for your trouble.
Oh,
Well, I
a
wanted the
swizzle
ark.
stick.
I wanted the fucking Noah's Ark. You gave me a swizzle stick. What the fuck? What am I supposed to do with this? Make callaloo. What? Yeah.
You
So
know that.
so
Yeah. Go
the
ahead.
house
Go ahead.
is the house is not exactly built the best, and it's also very old. And people don't realize how many old houses are around in the world.
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of work on the house. Or I'm pretty sure where you live, that apartment you live in is fairly old as well. I mean, I can't. I mean, I've seen
Well,
it. It's not that old, but it has been there a
no.
while.
It's been. I would say that it's been here for like about 40 years. It's probably been here for like about 30, 40 years. Yeah.
That's a long time. That is a long time.
And I am yet to see. There are actually, just truth be told, I did see a hairline crack in one of the walls, but other than that, nothing.
Yeah.
But it's something that I guess, and that's an entirely different topic, and that sets the stage for another discussion. In that we could be talking about how many houses in this part of the world happen to be earthquake proof. Especially when you consider that while the island in which we live is out of the hurricane belt, it's not exactly out of the earthquake belt.
No, we're on a fault.
This country is sitting on a fault. If I'm not mistaken, not one fault, but three.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if it's not a question of if, but when we get a really huge one, I do not know what we're going to do. We are so incapable when it comes to handling any kind of natural disaster. At least with a hurricane, we could be prepared. We know what's coming. But the thing about an earthquake is that it can strike without warning. It can happen in the dead of night. It can happen during the day when you're in the bath. My biggest worry is that I am in the bathroom and that thing starts to act up. I am going to bawl like a cow. I swear to God. No, I'm serious. I will scream. I think I will probably be gay for about 5 seconds and scream. No, I'm serious. That is something that is just it is really scary stuff. And
it
is. And I mean, you were talking about advertising. You were talking about how when we start out, we want to come up with a product that we can all be proud of, a brand that once we put our heart and soul into it. It's funny you should mention that, because I can remember, this is probably around 2008, 2009, when I was at the agency. We were supposed to do an ad for a radio ad for a certain brand of coconut milk powder. And I had this vision. I had this idea as to what it was supposed to sound like. And I wanted to go like the whole 9 yards. And then they told me, well, that's a great idea, but it's not gonna, it's not gonna be within the budget. It's gonna go over budget. And I said, not if it's done in a particular way. And it was this back and forth that took place. And then they said, look, we like your lyrics, we like what you've written, but we want to do it our way. And it was done their way. And I just thought it was the most boring piece of crap I ever heard in my life, even though I wrote it. Because I thought, yes, I'm proud of what I wrote, but at the same time, I wanted it to sound a particular way, and it didn't sound that way.
Which is usually the case. It's usually the case. I know. They take it and they figure they know best because it's their brand. Well, okay. I mean, fair enough. Whatever. But you did what you wanted to begin
I know
with,
what I did. I did. Yeah. And I mean, another example that immediately comes to mind. When I think we were at the agency and we were doing some stuff for the Green Network. one of the key hefes in the Green Network was a huge fan of the Mummy series. Don't ask me why. She was just crazy about the series. And she just thought that this film was going to do exceedingly well at the box office.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be 2008 because that same time, I think we were also doing a campaign for The Dark Knight, which was I think one of the more successful ad campaigns we did, at least for radio.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we were supposed to do a radio ad based on the Mummy, and we were supposed to make it funny, and my heart wasn't in it because I saw the previews for the film, and I wasn't exactly very enthusiastic about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I said, you know what, the hell with it. If this is what they want, this is what we'll have to do. Because sometimes you have to bend a little bit in order to get the job done. You have to just put aside, your ego is not your amigo. So you have to take your ego and just put it aside and say, all right, look, if that's what they want, let them get them what they want. Get them what they want.
Yeah.
And we did it. And like I said, she was there. The upside of all of this is that we got to see the movie for free. And because again, we got to see it for free. And I just laughed throughout the whole thing. And she was sitting like right next to me because it was I think it was like either the second or the third installment. It had to be the third installment.
It was the third one.
It was the third one, right?
Tomb of the Emperor or something.
Main actors weren't there. And and it just turned out to be such a crap fest.
Yeah.
And she was clearly very disappointed because she really wanted the movie to do well.
Yeah.
And and she never said a word to us after that. And I think it was the last time they ever asked us to do any promotional tie-in with any film associated with the Green Network because she realized, oh boy, we messed up big time. So
that's a thing that we have not talked about really, is hitching your brand to another existing brand for mileage. What we've talked about is we've talked about getting influencers to push your brand for you, right? But in these days, this is just before really social media really started. What the brands would do is all the time they would have either a spokesperson. So we had Sprite. When we had Sprite, we had Lebron, and that was a big deal.
LeBron was a big deal.
And I remember we had a contest. I think it was to go and see one of the finals in the States, one of the NBA finals. You win a prize, you and another person. It's an under the cap promotion where you buy a Sprite and you get and we had to run 2 full page ads. One was the promotion ad, right? With the ad, with all the fancy graphics and LeBron jumping and all that kind of stuff. And the other is the rules. The rules was a full page ad with 8-point text. And I remember the artist doing it. I said, wait, what is this? He said, this is the ad. I said, you serious? He said, yeah. We had to print, because of legal reasons, we had to print the entire legal requirement of the terms and conditions of entering the contest, because it was an NBA sponsored contest and they had legal requirements. And that was the first and only time I remember us ever doing that. And I always remember that. Like, you had to pay. So not only did you have to pay for a full page ad to run the Sprite campaign, you then had to go and pay for another ad just to show the rules, because you couldn't fit the rules into this. If you tried to put the rules into the ad, there would be no ad. There would be no promotional ad, right? So I remember that. I remember that. But that's not what I'm saying is that when it came to, tie-ins, I mean, we talked about when we did the Star Trek 2009 launch. with the same Green Network. That was a huge success.
It was a
We
huge
did
success,
great, yeah, did a huge movie was meh, but not as bad as the Tomb of the Chinese Emperor, whatever the hell they call it.
God,
Right?
listen.
But what happened was we would when we had Burger King as a client, and Burger King International insisted that all franchises had to do this tie-in with the movies. Now, that's a big deal for a local franchise holder to have to invest money to push the international promotional brand. You see?
Right.
So the budget was like, okay, the international franchisee would give you a little bit of money, kind of like, okay, just so that you could start doing things inside the store, like print the cups and do the posters and so on. We'll give you money for that. But the actual marketing budget, you all have to come up out of your own budget for that. And I think the first time we did it was with, oh God, not the first, the second time we did it was with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, right.
But we didn't do much with that. I just remember getting the free toys. I still have one of the free toys here, which is cool. You used to get the free toys. But then they came and said, well, we're going to do, when Transformers in 2007 was announced, we were like, wow, okay, cool. And they're like, yeah, we're going to do a tie-in. We're going to do all the marketing for it. And we're going to do this great thing. And that's where we were allowed to come up with our own ideas. And that's where we put up the big installation outside of Movie Town, which I won the award for because it was my concept. And those were the days that you did really good work. And then I got another award for doing the installation for Incredible Hulk. Incredible Hulk had come out with, what's his name? Edward Norton.
Ed Norton was in it,
Right, which is considered the beginning of the MCU. That was when they were in final production. They had announced that they are going to be doing the MCU. They're going to bring out Iron Man, and they had they had Tony Stark, and they had Ross in the. That was the first time you ever saw like a post-credit scene. It was in Incredible Hulk, right? And I remember doing a lot of the branding and stuff for that for Movie Town and Trinity Mall and all that. It was awesome. So those two tie-ins were very successful because they were tied to very successful brands. Along comes Transformers 2. I can't even remember what that was called. Revenge of the Fallen.
Revenge of the Fallen. Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Right on the money.
And we were told that we were not allowed to come up with any concept of our own. Everything was coming from Paramount. Paramount was insisting that we tell you exactly what you need to do. This is the package. You either spend 1 million, 2 million, or whatever, and we give you everything and you just execute it. And we kind of tried to circumvent it a little bit by doing some of the initial idea. Because, I don't know if you remember in the movie, there was this giant Devastator where the Constructicons come together. And then what's his name was on the pyramid and said, I'm now currently under the testicles of the big robot. And I was like, this movie is shit. This movie is shit. This movie is shit. But we had a plan. We had a plan to build Devastator.
Oh my goodness.
Right, reaching over the corner of the Burger King, and they're like, no, you can't show Devastator. I'm like, why not? It's in the trailer. No, that's a secret. You can't show, but it's in the trailer. Anyway, so we ended up doing something very, very piss poor. It was very poor. We had the Fallen's head with what I thought was going to be fire, but it wasn't fire. It was just kind of, I don't know what they tried to do. It just didn't look like fire. And I'm like, I hit my face every time I went into the movie town. I saw it, I just hit my face. Because it looked terrible. It looked horrible, right? And after that, we had Tomb of the Emperor was also a Burger King. No, the Burger King had a tie-in with that, and the Green Network had a tie-in with that. And both realized yeah, we're not doing this again. And after that, they scaled all of those things back. Well, then we had the global financial crisis in 2008. Don't forget. So things
Yes,
kind
that's
of
right.
got very rough. 2010,
Yeah,
2011, 2012.
things are very iffy. Things are very iffy
Yeah.
back then. That's true.
So I mean, when you get the opportunity to do something really well and you have the money to do it, that's when you shine. So the two planets need to be in alignment. The idea needs to be within budget. The budget needs to be able to produce the idea to the point where the execution is, realizing the idea to its fullest potential, or else it just falls flat. It falls flat. And that, coming back to your radio execution, is the same idea. You know that you're not going to get the full effect if you don't do it this way. And, well. But again, their egos,
and their egos at play. And their egos at play.
Yeah.
Now I can give you another interesting story in terms of contrasts. Because again, this is about the Green Network. When the Green Network did something with Chris Brown, when Chris Brown his career was like white hot, and we were we had a meeting involving what we were going to do with respect to Chris Brown in concert. If I'm not mistaken, I think he performed here, or we were sending people to go see him perform. I don't know how it was, but we were supposed to do something that sent a campaign that centered on him. Right. Not long after the campaign is launched, I will never forget this. Not long after that, he is involved in that domestic situation with Rihanna. And everything just turned old mass after that. We were like, oh my God, no. And all that just went to pot. Everything went to pot. Now, again, contrast that with Beyoncé. Beyoncé, we were supposed to do some promotional thing involved with Beyoncé. Beyoncé performed here. I think it was like a few hours. She went to the Queen's Park Savannah and she performed there. I think so, yeah. And one of the guys who was working with us, really talented dude. He's in animation. He's working in another agency now. But he got the golden opportunity to actually meet Beyoncé, and have a photograph with be photographed with her.
That was a funny story though, because he told me about that after. Yeah, when he won, first of all, it was just like when you work for the agency, how did you win? Anyway, he won and it was just a pure chance. Pure chance, he won. And it was interesting because he was able to relate his experience, because people who go to, so you go to Comic-Con and you get photos with Stan Lee or whoever, right? There's a protocol involved.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And he said, this guy is two of him, says, you are not allowed to speak to her. You're not allowed to touch her. You're not allowed to do any sort of crazy antics. Stand up, smile, take the photo, leave. And he's like, okay. And he went and stuff there. And she said, congratulations. And he's like, so freaking afraid to say anything because this big guy will punch him, And he's like, thank you. And she's like, smile. And he smiles. And there's a photo. He has the photo frame. And I always remember the photo frame that he was like, he's just like standing 2 feet next to her, and it just doesn't look natural,
I know. But, I remember that photograph. He was
and he's like, dude, that was the greatest experience ever, but I wouldn't want to go through that again because it was like so nerve-wracking,
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
But we also have a story of one of the other artists who had to go and photograph Rihanna. You don't know that story?
Oh no, I'm not. I've heard certain versions of that story, but I've never really.
There's not much to tell. He had to go because in the beginning, Rihanna, before she grew up, she was like a local artist in Barbados, and we had cable and wireless as a client, as part of And Cable and Wireless were basically sponsoring her and her endeavors in the beginning. And then she started to blow up. She had done this song with who was it? Was Jay-Z? Who was the song?
Jay-Z, Umbrella. It was
right.
Umbrella.
Well, yeah, I think it was she had just launched Umbrella.
Right.
But she was contractually obligated to finish out her contract with Cable and Wireless before she moved out of Barbados. And they said, well, we have to milk this for all it's worth. So we need photographs of Rihanna. And they sent one of the senior art directors to Barbados. And he ended up hanging out with her to do the photography. And he was like, he came back and he said, I have never met a nicer person in my life. She is very, very, very nice. She's very humble. She's very sweet. You know, he could see that she's not going to turn into an asshole or anything. And it's true. Rihanna hasn't turned into this kind of beast or anything like that. I mean, she's done some weird things in her career, but that's all part of the, you know.
That's part of the deal.
You know,
I mean, if you want to see the extremes of humanity, to quote Madonna, just get famous.
Yeah, sometimes exactly. But he has photos. He had photos of, you know, him interacting with you and them laughing together and stuff. It was real natural because he was art directing the shoot. You know, he was getting her to do different things or whatever. And they milked her for about 6 months after that. They started just using all kind of ads all over the place, you know, and she was in a TV ad as well. And they were just like, we have Rihanna, we're going to use Rihanna. Because we had used it for some local campaign ad stuff. And then obviously, you know, you know, Rihanna is now out into the ionosphere now. You can't bring Rihanna now to do an ad campaign for the Green Network. It would never happen.
That's way above.
In fact, now you can't even get a local celeb. You can't even pay for a local celeb because they're going to be asking for money to be represented, you know, to represent your brand. And I remember when Machel Montano was the star in the network's cap, in the network's crown, and he just said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm buying myself out of this contract and I'm going with the Red Network." Boom, and he was out, but he didn't last long because he blew up. He got bigger, and nobody could afford to hire him. So now he's out. He is now in the level of, well, no, now I need people to sponsor my brand, me. You see?
Yeah.
So
because he's become a brand now. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, this is the pitfall of a brand hitching itself to the star of a star, if you want to call it that, you know, and hitching itself to an event like a movie. You know, we talked about Septuagint and we did the Aluminum Man concept because that was when Iron Man came out. That was, excuse me, 2008.
2008. Yeah, that's 2008.
And they're still doing it because just the other day, the Green Network tried to do a tie-in with Doctor Strange. And I'm like, but this is lame. This doesn't make any sense. There's no reason for these two things to mash up. You know, it just why would you put these two things together? It makes no sense.
Why didn't it work though? Why didn't it work? Because I'm curious as to why it didn't work. Is it that they didn't invest as much as they should have? Is it that we have people in the industry now who are not as emotionally invested? Or is it that horror of horrors, maybe they are not as, oh God, I know I'm gonna get into trouble for saying this. Is it that they're not as proficient, for want of a better word, as we were? Could it be that? I don't know. I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping that's not the case.
They're very, very green.
Very green.
Very green copywriters. Very, very green.
And I'm thinking, if you see, again, if you want to be perfect in what you do, you have to have something called talent. And I think in situations like these, in most cases, as it pertains to advertising here, we don't have that. It's in very short supply. I would say I would be so bold as to say either you have the talent or you don't. If you have the talent, no, if you have the talent and you happen to have a strong work ethic and you are going to work your ass off to come up with a really good concept and a product, you that's it. You're on your way, and you're going to establish a reputation for being a damn good writer or a damn good graphic artist if you have that thing that's called talent. And you know, I'm trying to gauge where exactly is the new talent coming from. Where do we find? And another thing too, and this is something that we hardly ever talk about. Someone said that you need to be hungry. You need to have the hunger. You need to have the hunger. And if you don't have the hunger, if you're there and you say, well, I am a writer now. I get paid a nice bit of change. What else is there for me to do? I don't have anything else to learn.
Yeah.
And that's a fatal mindset that you're adopting. I mean, when I started, I really didn't know jack shit about writing ads, radio ads, because I was in radio, yes, but I was in front of a microphone and I was talking extemporaneously, and I thought, okay, this is great, you know, but don't ask me to write a radio ad. What are you, nuts? So it was a question of learning. It was a question of having, again, that it factor, that talent, and of course you have the hunger to say, you know what, I wrote an ad, people like it, I want to do more of this. Because it's like a drug. It's like a drug. You get the accolades and everything, and it hits you, and you take it to heart.
But not just the accolades, it sounds good when it comes out good, when it looks good, when it feels good. You feel proud. This is something that you built and created, and
you want to know something, Ian?
Yeah.
Sorry. And you want to know something? I got that. I actually got that kind of verve when I was working in one of the smaller agencies. When we were trying to come up with an ad concept for, oh God, I'm trying to remember now, for a certain brand of clay blocks, and you know, building a reputation. And I was writing all sorts of, you know, flowery copy and things like that, and nothing seemed to work. And I was at my wit's end trying to figure out what happened. And when they say that the inspiration comes to you when you least expect it, that is really true, because there was this melody that came to me in a dream. I shit you not. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I just found myself an old tape recorder and I whistled the melody into the tape recorder. And I actually put words to it. And I said, you know what? We could use this. We can make it sound like it's a marching band. And we can have voices singing in unison, like they're in a parade. And it's like, da, 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 but it's totally different. And we did that. We put that down there and we wrote it. And it took me about half an hour to write it down. And when I finally penned it, it was the feeling that I got was indescribably good, because the client loved it. And we went with it. And it was one of the ads I'm most proud of. And that's another thing. Yeah? The ads that you do, the ads that you're most proud of, never go on to win awards, because you know what you put into it. And you also know what you got out of it. And that, to me, is worth more than any award, because that's intangible, but it stays with you for so long. And that feeling, that good feeling. And but if you're in the industry, just to say, well, you know, you wanna come up with a decent paycheck, and that's it. And you figure that this is what you you can only go so far with this. I think that's a really that's such a kind of nihilistic kind of viewpoint to adopt.
Well,
At least that's my advice.
dare I say that you lost the passion for the job?
No, but check it out. What is passion? How do you? Okay. How do you?
Well, first of all, passion isn't when somebody. No. Passion is not when somebody screams at you, have more passion.
Yeah.
First of all, let's establish that. When somebody's shouting at you, where's your passion? I need to feel your passion. No, dude, I'm not getting passion from this.
No.
I'm getting hate. I hate you.
If you think if you think that you're telling me that you're saying to me that you're asking me where my passion is, and it's not there, you've killed it. You've essentially killed it. You've killed the fun, because if there's any key element with respect to advertising, yes, of course, you've got to take a serious approach to what it is, to the things that you do, but you also need to have serious fun doing it. And if you don't have that element of fun, if you take the fun out of it, the passion is lost. It is gone. And you're saying, you're constant drumming into the psyche. Where's your passion? Where's your passion? Where's your passion? Where's your passion? Yeah. It's not going to register shit if you keep doing that. Nothing's going to happen. Because remember what you had said? You had said once, I think you had penned this in a blog, or this is something that you send in one of your emails, that if you're trying to come up with something creative and you just sit there and you concentrate on being creative, it's like trying to get blood out of a stone. It is not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like forcing it. It's like what is it they say? If you have to force it to shit.
Well, as crude as that sounds, but
that is it essentially in no uncertain terms. That's how it is. That if you are literally running your head up against a brick wall, you need to change your tactic. You need to decide there are different. Okay, so I think a good example or a good technique. People who listen to us, probably think I don't give enough good advice. Well, I'm sorry, but all right, here's some good advice. So you picking up that melody in your when you woke up in the morning or when you woke up at night and you wrote down the melody or you taped it or whatever, that is literally the first step in creativity. It's almost, it comes to you when you're not looking for it, first of all. So I remember getting I always tell people I get my best ideas in the shower. And it sounds cliched, but it's true. Like I would be in the shower and I would just be like, hey, that's a great idea. Now, I also get great ideas when I used to go to the gym and when I exercise, I used to get ideas, Some of them I just didn't used to write down and whatever. But you feel energized. Excuse me. You don't get energized when you sit in an office and have to worry about somebody shouting at you, have more passion, be more passionate. That's not how the creativity comes out. Mind you, there are ways to get inside of an office. There are ways to get the creativity juices flowing. Sometimes it's technology. It's a headphones over your head. It's the right kind of music. It's basically sometimes just surfing the web for random shit. I use a website called Millernote, which basically I just pull images that I find, throw it into Millernote, and then I go back. And one day I actually went back into one of the note folders that I did. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. I forgot I had this stuff. And sometimes it's things that you collect over time that you accidentally, Now, the other thing is, Passion Fruit used to sit down and scroll through archive magazines. And that was how he used to get his inspiration. And that's fine. That's cool. And then he used to come and say, do this. But that's not fine. But I mean, the idea is, you find something that sparks, the move into something else. Sometimes it's play, it's trying things, it's experimenting, it's whatever. But in the case of an agency situation, when you work for an agency, and even when you work for like a startup where the pressure's on to perform, you don't have time to do those things, and it gets very onerous because now you feel like you're just part of a machine, just churning things shit out, and that's where you get burnout because people are being demanded to work and to perform consistently all the time. So
I remember there was this incident involving our dear friend, our dear sweet friend. I remember there was this incident where this young lady was really trying to get some sort of, I don't know what caused the bust up, but she was really trying to get something done in terms of subscribing to what it is he wanted. And she couldn't do it. She just could not do it because she just froze at that particular in that particular instance. She froze, and he did something or the other, and he said that he was going to do it himself, which he did, by the way. And I thought to myself, if I ever get into a situation where I happen to have that certain level of authority and that kind of level of responsibility, I hope I never, ever get to be as colossal an asshole as this guy is.
Yeah.
I really hope not to.
Yeah.
Because
I was asked a question if I wanted to be creative director. I think my dad asked me that. He said, do you want to be creative director of an agency? And I said, I don't know. I don't think I want to because I think I might end up being an asshole like my former boss. And he's like, no, you decide how you do the work. You decide how you treat the job. It all depends on how you decide you're going to do the things, But to defend passion fruit a little bit, he was kind of thrown into the job. Huh? There are people who are thrown into a job with the expectation that they know exactly what they're doing from the time they hit the ground running. And I kind of felt sorry for him because I knew that is it's not a good thing to be thrown into that situation and not be given okay. So when you start a job, like for you, for example, when you started working at an agency, you kind of had somebody to help you along. There was somebody there to kind of give you advice or whatever, whether it was the boss or whoever it is. You weren't working in a vacuum. But in his case, because he's middle management or upper manager or whatever, he was kind of put into a situation where he thought he knew what the job entailed, and then the reality hit him, and he didn't know how to navigate the waters, if you want to call it that. It's not people think that leadership is natural. Leadership is not natural.
No,
leadership is learned. Leadership is learned. And it's learned by having a mentor. And when you don't have a mentor, somebody who could mentor you into understanding, people who have gone through it before and understand how it works, then you're proverbially up a creek without a paddle. You see? So the young guys coming in, we talk about, when you're a young copywriter and you feel you're just shit and you know it already, and then somebody cuts you down if you want to quit the job because people are all a-holes or whatever. No, what you need is somebody to manage you, to manage your expectations, and to make you understand is you. So our friend Randall, for example, you have raw talent. You have the talent. It needs to be directed, and that's what a director does. A director is supposed to direct your movement through the company, your uplifting, your moving up the chain. You're learning. You're supposed to teach the guy how to do it, not this is shit, go and do it over. Those days done. And in
Yeah.
fact, the days of what's the word I'm looking for? The days of trying to, get somebody to do something extremely creative. That's gone out the window. I'm reading articles now of the pushback from going back to work full, physically,
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like, well, if you're going to make us work the full day in the office, you have to give us a 4-day week. So the new call now is a 4-day week day. It's the 4-day week, whatever it is. And I think the UK is trying it for certain sectors. They're trying a 4-day week. Yeah. And the idea is that you no longer have people, you no longer can get people in an office to stay for 7, 8, 9 hours working consistently for you. They're going to be like, no, I have a life. I have a life outside of here. I have given you my stipulated amount of time, and I'm not giving you any more. And that is happening. The younger people who are coming out have that expectation that I am not doing this. I'm not working for you for 12 hours if for this amount of pay. You either raise my pay, give me extra, pay or whatever, or I walk. And they're like, oh, well, you can find 1 million of you and whatever. All right, but the point about it is they're reaching a stage where the agency, and this is all part of the whole agency life situation, the agency has to start understanding that they can no longer do the things that they were accustomed doing in the 90s, in the 80s. I keep saying, well, in the 80s, they broke away from this stodgy suits, working at a wearing a tie to work kind of thing, into wearing the shorts. And, so now we have that revolution happening again. People don't want to go and come and sit in the office. They're going to do a Zoom call or a Teams call or whatever it is. So you have to work with those changes, And the ones who succeed in there going to succeed,
I remember there was this guy who he had a brief dalliance, if you will, in advertising. And but his forte was stand-up comedy. Anyway, he was asked to come up with a couple of campaigns. I think he worked as a freelancer, if memory serves me right. And he said, no, I am not going to work in the office. I'm not doing that. Give me a desk, give me a chair, and I will sit under that tree. They looked at him like he was nuts. I said, what? He said, you heard me. I want a desk, and I want a chair, and I want to write my stuff under that tree. Because that is the only time I am ever going to feel any kind of creative burst of a burst of creativity. I'm going to get it under that tree. And they you know what happened? They acquiesced. They said, okay, fine. You have your desk. You put it under the tree. And he came up with some pretty good work.
Yeah.
And it's not, you see, this is it. At least they had the sense, the common sense to adapt. And we have to understand, we have to realize that times, I know, again, this sounds cliche, but times are changing. And we have to change with those times.
Yeah.
And, and to suggest, especially in light of what's happened with the unspecified virus / pandemic, in light of what's happened, to suggest that we would have to revert to what we used to do and work the 5 days like it's nothing. It's ludicrous at best. It's ludicrous.
I remember our friend David St. Bernard was telling me, this is way back in 2000 and whenever it was, 3, 4. He's like, Google, a team in Google went to their line boss, and said, we can't work in this office. We want to go Ibiza and come up with ideas. And the guy said, okay. He said, however, if you come back after 4 or 5 days from this trip to Ibiza with nothing, you're fired. And they said, all right. And they went to Ibiza. I don't know what they did, but they came back with, I think, what was the, I mean, it was a failed product in the end. I think they came back with Google Plus, the answer, the social media answer, or whatever it is, or whatever the product was. They came back with that idea and had a whole plan and everything ready to execute. And that, Dana's like, that is, and in those days, he said, that's the way of the future. And he was right. As long as you get the work done, you could do it wherever you want. As long as you produce something that is tangible, that is workable, that isn't some, well, oh shit, we had to come up with an idea. Quick, grab a napkin. Here, we come up with wireless power. All right, cool. There you go and drink. That's not what the manager was telling them. The manager was telling them, you come back with something concrete, something workable, something that's backed up with facts and figures or whatever. You could go wherever you want. You could go Antarctica. I don't care. You know? Mm-hmm. So it really is. And that was groundbreaking in those days. Google was doing it long before we had pandemic. But what I'm saying is that not all companies can do that. Not all, places can do that or whatever, I was actually thinking about the future of radio, actually, the other day. Thinking that, because somebody was asking why, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you. Why, somebody asked a question, why is there still AM radio on car radios?
That's a very good question. That is a very good question. I wish I could come up with a reasonable answer, but the thing is, I can't. AM radio had its purpose. The reality of the situation is hardly anybody. I can't imagine a living soul listening to AM radio these days. AM radio is virtually non-existent.
Do we have any AM stations still running here?
Not to my knowledge. 6:10 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. are dead. Dead. Wow. Nobody listens. That no longer exists. 7:30 a.m. no longer exists. Neither does 6:10.
But the thing about AM, is that it has a much larger range. It does. It also is a lot cheaper to set up. You could push an AM. You could push an AM signal a lot further, a lot faster with less equipment. I mean, the quality would be shit, but at least And the story is that, or at least what I read, was that the reason why they still have AM as a band on radios, not just car radios, but radios in general, because not a lot of people actually buy radios still. They get radio off of the internet. But the reason why AM is still important is because if something should happen, okay, let's say nuclear war, which is kind of extreme, but the idea is if there's a disaster, you're going to go to AM to get your news, because the AM is a lot more robust in an emergency, and people are able to pick up those. That is a lot easier than it would be on FM radio. You see, the time when the entire country went dark. When was that? That was what, 3 months ago? 4 months ago now?
You're talking about, that was 4 months ago, February 16th.
Right.
Almost 4 months today. Yeah.
You all were you were in the station?
When it happened, no, I wasn't there. I wasn't there when it happened.
Okay, but the station didn't go down.
Actually, it did.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is, all you needed was somebody with an AM transceiver and a battery to push out, hey, we have the whole country is blacked out or whatever. You see, that's essentially what it's supposed to be used for. Whether or not people really realize that is another story. But essentially, the emergency broadcast system is an AM, frequency. You see, so it's interesting, that I don't think they're allowed to take off AM as a band on the car radio because it's still required in case of emergency.
What was it? What was it?
I was actually toying with the idea of shit. I better put up a tower and start broadcasting AM and just start talking shit on AM radio. I don't know who will listen to me. We could do this podcast on an AM station. It's like tune into Radio 666.
Well,
where we talk crap all day, all night.
AM radio. Think about AM radio. Oh my God, you're taking me back there. There was talk back in the 90s that what they wanted to do was that they wanted to convert 7:30 AM, for example, to an all talk radio format. That's what they wanted. They wanted to do that. But then they suddenly realized that there's more money to be made, not from talk, but from gospel. So they went to gospel. So the gospel programming made them a lot of money. It turned out to be more lucrative than having an all talk format. 6:10 AM wanted to do that. They wanted to go all talk as well, but nobody really had the cojones to do it. So what happened with AM 6:10 AM was that the vast majority of their programming at the time was Indian culture, Indian music, and so on. That was their forte, and that too made a lot of money. You see, the thing about it is, if you're a radio programmer in this country, I guess, no matter what part of the world you're in, if you are unless it's all about making money and a good bit of money, forget it. And talk radio, interestingly enough, there were a couple of experiments back in the early 90s. This was an FM radio. They were trying to come up with something, very cultured talk show, and they had it. I know because I was there. They would have it. They would broadcast it from the Hilton, and they would talk for about 2.5 hours, and it was a very genteel sort of scenario.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't last very long, but when they decided, one of the radio stations, I think it was 100 FM, interestingly enough, a music station, they did a kind of talk format in the morning. And from that came Tony and Dale. And that kind of mushroomed into this talk universe. And now you have about 3 or 4 FM radio stations entirely devoted to talk. Or at least you have, in most of the FM frequencies, you have a kind of a talk format, especially as far as the morning is concerned. Now with Platinum, that's not the case. Platinum is not really talk. We're more music than anything. That's it. We're music oriented.
Yeah.
And people like that. But there are also people who like talk. And if there are people who want to listen to talk, let them go ahead and listen to talk. I'm not gonna force people to listen to music or whatever it is. Whatever your taste is, it's there.
What was the meme that I saw the other day? I don't know if you saw the meme. There's a photo of a futuristic city, right? Like in the future, And they said this is what Trinidad would look like without Power 102 FM.
Oh my God! Well,
And I'm like, oh dear.
The problem with that is the problem with talk radio. The problem with talk radio in Trinidad and Tobago, I guess, it's a problem with talk radio anywhere. Again, it is not so much the fact that there's talk radio; it's the quality of talk.
Well, exactly.
And I don't think the vast majority of the listening public is not exactly geared up to it to edifying an edifying discourse, especially when it comes to politics. And given our culture, given our proclivities, we are more into bacchanal, Morvelang.
Which Morgan Job got on that train early. Morgan Job with his show. What was it, the station?
It was called Ideas Exchange, and it was in Prime 106 FM.
Right. And Morgan Job was famous for We Lost That Caller.
Yeah.
Because he used to cut them off. And
he used to cut them off
became a thing.
Yeah, because he he was able he tapped into a kind of thing there, the zeitgeist of the time. You see, now a lot of people didn't like his style because they just thought he was abrasive. And it proved to be told that there were times when he was. But more often than not, he wasn't too far off the mark. And I think he was very much misunderstood. But that's not important right now. What is important is that we were talking about advertising and branding and so on. And again, that word always comes into play, which is adaptability. There's going to come a time when people in this country are, I'm hoping against hope, are not going to be so tuned in to particular things as it relates to politics and bacchanal and confusion or what have you. The hope is that we would have evolved considerably since then. Now, people talk about all sorts of things in talk radio. There's this urban radio station that has a very popular show dealing with relationships and so on. And we just found out that today, one of the key people behind that show just got charged with domestic violence. So,
you're not practicing what you're preaching.
Not exactly practicing what you're preaching, and you're not exactly tying in with you are advertising. Again, this too is a form of advertising. If you are there as a host and you are advertising a particular kind of approach in terms of how you interact with somebody, in terms of relationships and so on, you're doing that. Fine, fantastic, and you're practicing what you're preaching. Good. But you say one thing and you do something completely different. I mean, your brand suffers and your station suffers as a result as well. So yeah. All of that you have to factor in.
But the thing is, I would say the talk radio now is a product of this social media, highly polarizing digital way of doing things. This is not.
But which came first? Is it talk? We know talk radio came first.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, it was contained within a little bit of a silo.
Yeah.
Once social media came out, the same people who would go on Morgan Job's show and say, Mr. Job, you're talking absolute rubbish. Whoever we lost that caller, they would go on a comment on somebody's post and say the same thing. You see?
Yeah.
And they have no filter at all for them out. So what I'm saying is, what I wanted to say before I forget is that the power of radio, which is, when I say the medium is the message, which is Marshall McLuhan's thing.
Yes.
People say, well, that no longer applies anymore. I don't agree. I think the medium is the message is because you have to look at what this medium is capable of doing. And I always remember it was the radio people in Rwanda who were part and parcel of the call to commit mass murder.
Correct.
That was a clear thing, that the radio stations were polarizing the society, and there were people following what these radio DJs were saying. Take up the man said, he said, if they give me the cutlass now, I go in and chop up my neighbor. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And the power of radio at that time to do that is the same thing we've seen in the power of social media. Because now we have the things talking about the January 6th Commission, where we have this thing, whether you like the politics or not, the idea that you can sway people into doing something when they could just, the mob rules. Then, the weekend warriors kind of thing. They run out and they do this nonsense and then go home and think, oh, well, I'll just go and take a selfie now and go back to my normal life. No, you just destroy the capital or whatever it is. What the hell, So, I mean, whether brands like it or not, they are in that category of being able to move and shape through the medium, through the message, people. And they've always been able to do it. Advertising has always been able to do it. And the problem now is that in digital realms, which is the big problem with Facebook, Facebook is in hot water again because a woman is suing them because she said she was not able to see ads for apartments in her area because the people running the ads to the apartments were targeting people of upper income or higher income people or within a certain age group. It was age group. And she was over the age group and she wasn't seeing the ads. And she said, but that's ridiculous. I could pay for one of the apartments. I could go and live in one of these apartments, but I never saw any of these ads on Facebook, and that's ridiculous. And she's suing Facebook. So again, it's the idea of social engineering, that through the advertising platform, you can direct people into silos and have them pit themselves against each other. And it's scary. It's scary in a way,
It is, and it is a kind of. I mean, George Orwell couldn't have picked it better. He could not have come up with a better way to envision this kind of crowd control and this kind of cultish behavior. But that's what make no mistake, that's what it is. So again, how do we deprogram? How are we able to discern what is reality and what is not? How are we able to discern a good brand from a bad brand? How are we able to tell the difference between good marketing and marketing that's going to lead people astray? Because as someone once said, evil seems sexy.
And
it's the reason why you have certain networks doing so well, because networks thrive. Certain TV networks, certain radio networks thrive on negativity. That is what pushes ratings up. And interestingly enough, there was a story, a survey rather. It was featured. I think it came from Reuters, and it was featured on BBC earlier today. It said that the vast majority of people are really not into news anymore because they find the news to be depressing. They find that it is something that the news is not worth knowing anything about. And you find that happening more with younger people under 35 just don't care about to hear, the negative, because after a while the repetition and that kind of drudgery, it gets to them.
No, it's true. It's true. I used to tell my friend Ria, I said, Ria, I think you better start sharing like pretty photos and stuff because you're sharing a lot of depressing news. And she's like, you're right. I think this is what's making me depressed. And she stopped sharing,
Right. So I'm right. So see me now posting on my page. That's why I post a lot of funny stuff, memes and stuff like that, because people like that. They don't want to hear. They don't want to know about. No, I mean, when the time comes for something serious to post, I will post it. But more often than not, the vast majority of stuff I post is funny stuff, because again, if you, I will leave that up to the radio programmers and the news people to how do you make the news more palatable. I would say maybe the best way to do it is to come up with a feel-good story. And just tell people, because that's what they did. I mean, people don't forget this, but back in the 80s, when CNN, and I remember this is the height of the Cold War and everything, CNN had a segment called Looking Up. And they even had a half-hour show called Good News. And it was nothing but good news. And people watched that and they reacted to it. So if you're going to do that, you need to have a balance. And that's not happening
Absolutely. Now. It is depressing. It is a problem, but we need the news. And we need to pay for the news.
We need to be informed, but we also need to be, we also need to be reminded that while we need to be informed, the world is not necessarily a shit show. It is not the entire world is a shit show. It's not.
Exactly. Anyway, we have done quite a long show today. and we have not done everything that we need to do. So we're going to continue. We need to do our live show, and we really need to do that. But things are a little difficult right now. When you think we could do this live show, Jarrod?
If we're going to do this live show, chances are we're probably going to have to do it on a Wednesday, next Wednesday. We'll see how it goes.
But can you do Wednesday evening, like in the afternoon kind of situation? Because I could do Wednesday evening. I can't do Wednesday morning. I could do Wednesday after lunch.
Yeah, Wednesday after lunch that sounds more feasible.
Well, we'll frame it up for next week and we'll see how things go. And that I think we call that the last show. And we'll go on hiatus for a little bit and take a little break, and then we'll come back with some maybe a different. I want to see if we could try a different format. Maybe we could try doing the live show from now on, but we'll see. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what are we defining today?
Adaptability.
Adaptability. What's that?
What is adaptability? Adaptability is the art, if you will, of knowing when to change and how to change, lest you become irrelevant. But that's not important right now.
Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. New episodes every Monday, new episodes every Wednesday. This week's episode is now on our YouTube channel. Sorry, last week's episode is now on our YouTube channel. But just search for that. But that's not important right now. And we will see you again, and have a good week.
Have a good week, guys.
Thanks a lot. See you all.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.